More commentary from me on the crazy madness happening this week all over the planet. I also talk about some of the dumbest criminals in the world. And in this corner, a rude adult man versus, in the other corner, a 12-year-old Girl Scout? Ladies and gentlemen, we have a decision with a knockout in the first round. The winner is... Ready, set, go. This is A World Gone Mad. Hello, I'm Jeff Allen Wolf, and you're listening to A World Gone Mad, Season 1, Episode 4. I want to thank everyone joining us if it's your first time, and also everyone who's been with us from the first episode. We're growing the audience by leaps and bounds. We're now heard in 32 states in the USA and in 7 countries. Something fun that I'm starting on this episode, and I wanted to announce a surprise that I'm going to be giving away to one listener. It's not a big thing, but it's a fun thing, and it's something that's worthwhile. So stick around for the episode. I'll explain it later and let you know what it entails. And now, let's talk about the madness happening around the world. Former FBI informant is charged with lying about the Biden's role in Ukraine business, undercutting the GOP impeachment inquiry. Special counsel David Weiss charged a former FBI informant with lying about President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden's involvement in business dealings with Ukrainian energy company Burisma Holdings, undercutting a major aspect of Republicans' impeachment inquiry into the president. Alexander Smirnov, 43 years old, is facing charges in connection with lying to the FBI, creating false records. He was arrested Thursday at Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas after his arrival in the U.S. from overseas, and he will make his initial appearance in federal court this coming week. Now, Sean Hannity and right-wing media claim the so-called Biden crime family took millions in bribes. Hey guys, your narrative just fell apart. Besides that, a lot of Republican leaders were already saying before this revelation that there was no there as far as impeachment evidence against Biden. Seriously? That's what happens when you have a lot of empty accusations that don't come through. It blows up in your face, guys. In other news, outspoken critic of Putin, Alexei Navalny, has died. He was taking his morning walk in the prison yard, suddenly collapsed, unconscious, and died a half hour later. I don't want to hear any condolences, Navalny's mother says. He was healthy and cheerful on Monday. So for all of us who are aware of the news and follow world events, obviously Putin killed him, or had him killed. This sick, insecure, dangerous dictator silences another critic of his. He's paranoid, he's desperate, and that's what makes him extremely dangerous. He poisons critics, other critics die in mysterious accidents in a car, etc. He invades other countries and calls it a military intervention. We did it because of all the terrorists that are living there and can hurt Russia. He needs to be stopped or put in check by the world community. That is why it's so important for the Republicans to get off their asses and give more support with money and weapons to Ukraine. And of course, they have to do this as well for Israel. More madness in the news. Fani Willis, in an unprecedented move by Donald Trump's lawyers, was subpoenaed to testify in the disbarment trial against her. And this was related to the trial against Donald about the Georgia election. Now, Miss Willis was not required to testify. In fact, she waived her right about not having to appear. While the defense and the prosecuting attorneys were going back and forth in front of the judge, Ms. Willis interrupted and stated to the judge, "No, let's go. Ask me what you want. I have nothing to hide." Miss Willis took the stand, was defiant and adamant against the prosecuting team, and stood her ground. Now, this case is hinging on two things. Number one, according to the prosecutors for Donald Trump's team, she had an affair, an illicit affair. And two, that she gained money from her connection with Nathan Wade, the man she was having the affair with. Now, here's the problem. Whether she was doing her fellow co-attorney in the Donald Trump Georgia case has zero to do with the case against Donald. And for those of you who believe that what I'm saying is BS, no. Anybody listening who doesn't agree with that, you're wrong. That is not grounds for disbarment by the law's standards. Here's an example from years before. Look at Marcia Clark and Chris Darden in the O.J. Simpson case. They were having an affair, nothing to do with them being disbarred, and they weren't disbarred by the judge. So that leaves the judge to rule on one thing. Was there any income gained between the two hooking up? Did Willis gain financially from the hookup? And so far, myself watching the trial, there really isn't a lot there. There may be if Trump's team has evidence that there was money to be gained, but it doesn't sound like they have any hardcore evidence yet. So there may have already been a ruling after I recorded this, but my prediction is even though Fani Willis made several mistakes as far as the affair, I think the judge is going to dismiss this case and rule there is no grounds for disbarment. Therefore, thankfully, the trial against Donald about Georgia will continue in a timely manner. Yep, we can get away from all of those BS distractions thrown up by the Trump team again. Turning to some world madness, Kim Jong-un has broken with decades of North Korean policy. Does it mean he's planning to attack South Korea? In recent weeks, the leader has brushed aside decades of his country's policy towards South Korea, now proclaiming that North Korea would no longer seek reconciliation and reunification with the South, and calling for it to be classified as their permanent enemy. Kim Jong-un earlier, before this policy shift, Kim ordered the destruction of the Arch of Reunification monument that his father had put up decades ago. Now, Kim Jong-dum, Donald's favorite love bro, let's label them Tweedledee and Tweedledum. His mental state is hanging by a thread. I'm talking about Kim Jong, although you could apply it to Donald as well. Kim is saber-rattling again for the millionth time. So is this next on the horizon? Kim making a move on South Korea? And the final madness for this week, Judge Arthur Engoron hit Donald Trump with his biggest punishment to date this past Friday, in a ruling that fined the former president nearly $355 million for fraudulently inflating the values of his properties. He also hit Donald's son with a $5 million fine. Engoron found Trump liable for fraud, conspiracy, issuing false financial statements, and falsifying business records, and barring him from serving as a director of a company in New York for 3 years. And for the final rebuke from the judge to Donald, the judge wrote, "This court finds that defendants are likely to continue their fraudulent ways unless the court grants significant injunctive relief," Judge Engoron wrote. Trump has been ordered to pay $438 million this year in fraud and defamation cases. Hey, Donald, attention. There are still more trials to come your way. And with that, the thick plottins. I'll be right back. You're listening to a World Gone Mad podcast. We encourage your feedback, and the way to do that is two ways. Through our email, AWorldGoneMadPodcast@gmail.com, AWorldGoneMadPodcast@gmail.com, or our toll-free number anywhere in the continental United States or from Canada. And that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's just a voicemail system. No one's going to answer the phone. And that number is 833-399-9653. 833-399-9653. In your email or phone call, just leave your first name, the city, state, or country where you're writing or calling us from, how you heard about us, and your age. Doesn't have to be exact, just a range. You're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, etc. Looking forward to your comments. And now, back to the show. This segment is our bizarre, unusual, weird story that I've come across. You've heard the term wanted? All right, usually this refers to criminals wanted by the FBI, or the criminal's photo is on the wall, or rather it used to be. The photo is in the post office, and it showcased the top 10 wanted criminals at this moment in time. Now, every criminal you would think would plan his next big robbery or burglary or whatever the next crime will be, and they plan well ahead, supposedly. That's why they have the notoriety that they do. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum, shall we? I'm going to introduce you to the world's dumbest criminals who apparently didn't plan ahead, and I don't know what they were thinking with each crime. Let's meet Albert Bailey, one of the stupidest criminals you'll come across. This man and his partner planned a bank robbery. Now, it's evident that they've never stolen before, even for a pack of gum as a kid in a grocery store. These two robbers called the bank before they robbed it and told the bank that they were coming in to rob it. So now all the bank's employees know that the robbers are on their way, and now they have enough time to call the cops. This took place in Connecticut. After a few minutes, Albert Bailey sent his partner into the bank with a note to tell them that we are the same robbers who just called you on the phone. Bailey comes in, and then Bailey and his partner were promptly arrested and charged with first-degree robbery and received 9 years in prison. Let me leave you with one more story of one of the world's dumbest criminals. A man named Darren Kimpton, who was from Abington, Northampton. He decided on his target to rob one day, and he entered the house at night that was his target. Unfortunately, this house was already robbed earlier that night, so there were police officers still inside the house investigating the earlier burglary. And they were there at the same time that Kimpton broke in. Of course, he tried to run immediately, but it was not that easy. He was caught on the spot. Now, here's the really funny twist to this story, if this can get any weirder. Before entering this house, he tried to rob another house, but was unsuccessful and left marks of his blood on the window. So the police easily linked him to that crime as well. And there you have two of the world's dumbest criminals of all time. I'll be right back. You're listening to a World Gone Mad podcast. If you came across an unusual story, please send it our way, or send us your comments, suggestions, what you liked, what you didn't like. Two ways you can do that. Our email, AWorldGoneMadPodcast@gmail.com, or our toll-free 24 hours a day, 7 days a week voicemail, 833-399-9653. And please, don't forget, if you're listening to our podcast on an app, please hit subscribe. That way you'll be notified when our new episode goes up online. We would love to hear from you. That helps us improve our episodes. Thank you so much. Now, back to the show. Today's uplifting story is about a man that grossly misjudged how to speak to girls, and he is put in his place immediately. 430,000 people who heard about this story are in support of the person who put this disrespectful man in his place. Mr. Eli McCann shared a story of an encounter at a Girl Scout cookie stand. This incident took place in Salt Lake City, and Eli wrote about it on his Twitter account. "I just saw the most wild thing," McCann wrote. "A man started walking toward the Girl Scouts cookie stand in front of the grocery store, and he yelled, 'My bitches are back!' And this Girl Scout looked at the man and just yelled, 'No, walk away.' And he did. And just like that, with no flourishes or nuances, the situation was handled." McCann wrote out the full story on his blog, offering some extra details to his tweets. "It was truly jarring," he wrote of the man's exclamation, "like it was sort of the last thing I'd expect anyone to say. My mind suddenly rebooted. The 6 or so other people who were all standing around in front of the grocery store froze and looked at him. I opened my mouth to say something, but then really didn't know what to say," McCann wrote. "It was unclear who he was calling bitches," he continued. "I mean, if it was the Girl Scouts, well, obviously that was terrible. If it was the cookies, I mean, that's kind of funny, but totally inappropriate to say to a bunch of 12-year-olds. Is that how old Girl Scouts are?" McCann writes. "Either way, he shouldn't have said it, and I don't know what could have possibly made him think this was a fine way to approach a group of 12-year-old Girl Scouts." McCann said the girl's response was immediate, and it floored everyone. "Her tone was so full of confidence and sass," he wrote. "It was the most perfectly delivered line I have ever heard." This dude completely froze after her reply. He just stopped walking. His face went bright red. His mouth was sort of gaping open. He did this very awkward and stilted nod, almost apologetic, abruptly turned around, and shuffled back to his car at like a 6-minute-a-mile pace. The girl just death stared him all the way through his walk of shame, McCann wrote. "I don't understand it at all," McCann continued. "Everyone just stood around in silence." McCann says it took him a bit to digest what he had just seen. "I ended up walking into the store, and the entire time I was shopping, I was just trying to process what had happened. I kept replaying it over and over and wondering if I had misheard or misunderstood something," he wrote. Who was this guy? Did he just make the biggest miscalculation of his life? Is he going to move away and start a new life now? Is that girl going to be president one day? Can I adopt her? Can she adopt me? Can I start a cult to follow her? McCann continued in his blog. As he was leaving the store, he went up to the girl to compliment her, and then got another perfectly delivered line from this intrepid 12-year-old Girl Scout. "2 adult women were standing behind the girl, the troop leaders, I assume," McCann continued in his blog. "I said to the girl, 'I saw how you handled that man earlier. That was really, really impressive. Your troop is pretty lucky to have you.' Without stuttering, with perfect comedic timing, this 12-year-old responded back to me, 'You gotta be pretty tough if you're gonna go out in this outfit.'" Drop the mic. Let's all of us give a virtual hug to this 12-year-old Girl Scout. This is what happens when we teach girls their value and that they need to be respected even at a young age. And that's our inspiring story for this week. Coming up next, I'm going to tell you about the prize we're giving away. You're listening to A World Gone Mad, Episode 4, and I want to thank you very much. Also wanted to explain the giveaway that I was telling you about earlier at the start of the podcast. So starting now, and for the next 3 shows up to Episode 7, at the end of 1 month, I'm going to draw one lucky listener's name and give them a $25 Amazon gift card. Now everyone knows the main thing about Amazon, you can find a lot of cool stuff there. So with $25, hopefully you should be able to find a goodie or two. So how do you enter into this giveaway? Well, it's very simple. Send me an email to AWorldGoneMadPodcast@gmail.com AWorldGoneMadPodcast@gmail.com. In the email, write Amazon. Tell me your first name, what city, state, country you live in, and how you found the podcast. And your age range. You don't have to be exact if you don't want to be. Just give me an idea. Any comments about the show, good, bad, or otherwise? Please leave that also. So very easy, an email with that information I just told you. Send it to me. Your emails will help me add features, remove features, and improve features. And because of your feedback, this show becomes better. I'm looking forward to your comments. This is A World Gone Mad. I'm Jeff Allen Wolf. Until next time, stay hopeful.